Coming up on the July 16th update for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Gunn is reworking / nerfing Grandpa. However, the way that Gunn has chosen to do this is very short-sighted, and it's going to lead to a lot of negative gameplay for both sides, victims, and family. Now, in this reworked version of Grandpa, instead of each perk activating individually with each level like it does now, instead Grandpa perks have now been tier listed by the developers to only activate at certain levels between 1 and 3 Grandpa. In the devs' mind, this means they can put strong Grandpa perks at level 3 Grandpa and weaker perks at level 1 Grandpa, and this will fix the issues that currently exist with the Grandpa mechanic, where the family will often only equip 2 or even 1 really strong Grandpa perk like exterior alarms that highlights important doors every time they're opened, and permanently have access to that perk throughout the entire match because it's unlocked at level 1 Grandpa, which is super easy to get and maintain. Now, at a rudimentary level, this rework might seem like it's a good idea, and a lot of victim mains are praising the change as a much needed family nerf. However, in this video, I'm going to explain why in the big picture, this is a very unhealthy change for the game. So what victim mains are so happy about with this change is that they believe that it will encourage family players to use blood builds over damage builds, because now they really need to get Grandpa to level 3 in order to get the better Grandpa perks. But this is not at all what is going to happen, and I say that somewhat obviously, right? It takes a very long time to get Grandpa to level 3. Against good victims, the match will almost always be over by time a family member gets Grandpa to level 3 simply through using blood buckets. Good family players already know this, but more chill family member players might still try blood builds for a while, but through conditioning, they'll eventually realize there's no point and will swap to pure damage builds like everyone else. Because even if victims don't rush, they are still going to stab Grandpa the second he hits level 3 because they know for a fact that's when exterior alarms is going to be activated, right? It's just way too much information for the victims. The only viable strategy now is with Hitchhiker to block Grandpa from getting stabbed, but we all already know that in itself, this strategy usually only works against bad victims anyway. So this change has, for the most part, deleted Grandpa from the core aspect of the game. He'll only come into play when family gets kills and fills up their blood vial, or when trying to get Grandpa to level 5 so that they can end the match. Now, everything I've said so far doesn't even take into account the ripple effect of this change, right? For example, let's take a look back at how close encounters were changed. Originally, when getting in a grapple, if at any point another family member showed up and hit the victim who was in the grapple, it ended the grapple immediately and the victim was instantly killed. This made close encounters a last resort, high-risk move that was entirely in the victim's control whether they wanted to do it or not, and it worked really well. However, there was a legitimate problem where if a victim won a grapple but got hit by another family member before the cutscene ended, they would still get insta-killed, which was obviously really stupid and unfair. So pretty much everybody asked for that to be removed specifically, yet the devs decided that what they would do instead of listening to the community was to remove the insta-kill entirely. Now, this again was a very short-sighted balanced decision that at the time was praised by victim mains because it was an enormous buff for them, right? But now with retrospect, let's look back at how that change actually ended up affecting the game over time. The grapple meta, along with Danny, led to a justified mass exodus of family players, making victim queue times shoot up to 15 minutes at times, and as a result, multiple grappling related victim perks had to be nerfed along with bone scraps. So in the short term, victims got a massive buff, but in the long run, that short-sighted change that nobody asked for led to a bunch of victim nerfs. So this is why it is crucially important to get these things right the first time around, because if you build a shitty foundation as developers, you will be forced to try to keep that foundation standing with duct tape and band-aids for the rest of that game's lifespan. This is DBD balancing here. It's not being able to see the forest for the trees, right? It's just so unfortunate that modern balance teams seem to have such massive egos when it comes to their decision making that it's kind of accepted at this point that they'll just never undo a terrible balance choice, and instead they'll double down on it. They'll triple down on it, rebalance the entire game around it. The sunken cost just has no limit, it seems, and I just really don't get it, but it's just a massive problem in the entire gaming industry right now. So with that example, what will the ripple of this short-sighted grandpa nerf be? Well, let's go through them. To start, there will be way less grandpa feeding. For the most part, good family players will almost completely ignore grandpa now. There's just no point to it. That means a few things. So here comes the ripple, right? The first is a Maria nerf. If nobody is feeding grandpa, Maria's ability is pretty much worthless now. Also, way heavier camping playstyles now. I've said multiple times that basement doors should not work with exterior alarms, but since with this update, exterior alarms is effectively dead, family players will be way more stressed going out for chases. And since there's no reason to waste time collecting blood anymore, that means way more solidified camping playstyles. Moreover, we have solo queue issues. Who gets hurt the most by this change? Solo queue, and both sides of solo queue, right? Pre-made groups can work around these changes in one way or another. Solo queue groups are much less likely to be able to do that. Lastly, there's inevitable future changes that will have to build upon this change. For example, let's look at the grandpa perks. Level 1 grandpa, animal farm, experienced stalkers, well, and wind doom. That's all fine, I guess. Let's move on to level 2 grandpa. Always in sync, barge to the point, brute strength, swing for the fences, and suffocating grip. Now, suffocating grip is by far the best perk here. So victims that want to abuse grappling will never let grandpa be level 2. They'll stab him every single time. This makes level 2 grandpa completely worthless and a waste of time. Now we move on to level 3 grandpa. Don't have all day. This is way too pathetic for level 3. Excited grandpa. This again is way too pathetic for level 3. Well-fed youngins. Laughably pathetic for level 3. Then we have nobody escapes hell. Good grandpa perk, but rendered useless because it's now level 3, which means it's not going to do anything. This is like using corrupt intervention in the endgame. It doesn't make any sense. So what are our options now? Do we move it to level 1 grandpa? Well, if we do that, then it becomes the obvious meta, right? So do we buff it along with all these other level 3 and level 2 grandpa perks that are somehow even more worthless now than they used to be? Like, what is the next step here? Do you get my point? Do you see how the devs have set themselves up for failure here? Finally, there's exterior alarms, the only grandpa perk worthy of being level 3. It's almost like this entire system was made on the backbone of exterior alarms being somewhat problematic. And instead of simply nerfing exterior alarms by removing basement doors from it like every single person suggested, instead the balance team decided to implement a feckless new system that's doomed to cause more problems than it solves. Now, all that said, I do believe that Gun's intention with this update was to make people run bad grandpa perks and feel like they're not trolling their teammates who are running good grandpa perks. And in this update, bad grandpa perks will no longer troll teammates. That's true. So in that way, they did succeed. So there's at least a reason to bring worthless grandpa perks now if you don't have any good ones. But obviously, there's still no reason to actually activate them because it's going to do more harm to you as a family player, wasting precious time feeding grandpa when the victims are pushing objectives, right? Now, what was the solution here? Well, there's a way these problems could have been solved without creating all of these new problems and killing grandpa in the process. All Gun had to do was make all 3 grandpa perks activate at level 1 grandpa in a much weaker form, and then get progressively stronger as grandpa is leveled up, like perk tiers in DBD. So for instance, it would look something like this. Grandpa level 1, suffocating grip makes close encounters 10% easier. Grandpa level 2, suffocating grip makes close encounters 15% easier, and Grandpa level 3 makes close encounters 20% easier, which is the effect of the perk as it is right now. And honestly, they could even apply this to Grandpa level 4 if they wanted to, because at the moment, Grandpa level 4 is pretty much useless. So this simple change idea would make every family member's Grandpa perk activate in some capacity throughout the match. It promotes family players to use more unique builds that can synergize with niche Grandpa perks now that the value is actually guaranteed in a limited capacity. So that's incentivizing build diversity and also actually feeding Grandpa, which with Gun's rework is going to happen much less often, especially amongst better players. So in conclusion, Gun took yet again the shortest path to fixing a problem in the game and has most likely set themselves up for a lot of future headaches and unhealthy gameplay. I hope they reconsider, but I know they won't. Victims who praise this change, I guarantee it will backfire on you and make the game less fun for you. And that about wraps it up. I'm really curious to see how it all plays out on July 16th. Let me know what you all think about this rework. And as always, thanks for watching and have a good one. Hey, so you're at the end of the video, huh? Well, you got some options, don't you? 2 of them to be specific. And you might want to click them soon, because if you don't, there's no telling where YouTube's going to take you. But it's probably going to take you away from Choi. And you don't want to go away from Choi, so click one of the videos.